Welcome in Beth Mowins to the program. Good morning, Beth. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, good morning, Gary.
Good to have you on.
I didn't get a chance to hear the song, but I know growing up in the 70s myself, I'm going to have to throw a little Peter Frampton on, I think, later today, now that you got me thinking about it.
I've motivated you. Another favorite from the 70s. Absolutely. Gail Sierens, a Tampa Bay sportscaster back in 1987, called an NFL game, the Seahawks and Chiefs, alongside Dave Rowe on NBC. It was a regional telecast, and until Monday night, that was the last time that a woman did play-by-play for the NFL. You became the first woman to do a national telecast, obviously the first woman to do Monday Night Football. It was a great game you had. The Chargers and Broncos in Denver. Broncos were comfortably ahead. The Chargers came back and almost won it, so you had some drama in the game. You had Rex Ryan making his color analyst debut with you. What was Monday night like for you?
Oh, it was that dream scenario where you prepare for everything as a play-by-play announcer, and then the game gets in the way, and you don't have to talk about any of the periphery stuff, and you just get to talk football. And what a fourth quarter we had! What
Absolutely.
A fantastic finish we had! And it was very satisfying. We had a really good time. Rex was great to work with. Just a really nice guy away from the booth as well. So it was a lot of fun. Something, we've been building towards it for several months now, and it was great to be able to be a part of that franchise that you grow up watching as a kid.
Absolutely. You've been doing play-by-play for a long time, and I do some myself, so I know that when you're preparing for a telecast, you're focused on the job at hand. Now that it is over, though, and you see all of the Twitter comments about it and all the different news stories, the fact that, as I said at the top of the show, you don't find many people that get an opportunity to make history. You did. Have you had a chance to grasp that yet?
I think a little bit. I really have always tried to approach it as, I'm a play-by-play announcer. And the fact that, gender is a discussion at all, I've always felt should be secondary and primarily for other people to have. I think it's important. There was a little girl that came down pregame. I was down on the field, and she had an ESPN T-shirt on, and she had a microphone with her, and her mom and dad were there. And so moments like that, you do appreciate that you are reaching a pretty broad audience, and hopefully you are inspiring a lot of young kids, regardless of what their dream is, to, go and chase it. And it's okay to be ambitious and to be bold, and it requires a lot of hard work. And if you want it bad enough, you can figure out a way to go get it. So that in a sense has kind of been rewarding. And if there's any other far-reaching implications, then I'll let other folks write about that. And my dad, of course, is keeping a big clip file for me. So maybe 10 years down the road, I'll be able to go back and read a lot of stuff and let it all soak in.
Beth Mowins, our guest here on the Gary Harris Show on the Bud Light Hotline, talking about her debut on Monday Night Football this past Monday night. You mentioned that gender shouldn't be an issue, and I think really for the most part it's not anymore. I know if I turn on a telecast of any sport and there is a female play-by-play announcer, I don't even give it a second glance anymore. But the NFL has kind of been that last bastion of the men's club, so to speak, and I think that's why it is such a groundbreaking thing that you did on Monday night, and I hope we see more female play-by-play announcers. You're not done. You're going to be working for CBS. I think your next telecast, and correct me if I'm wrong here, will be the Browns-Colts in Indianapolis on September 24th, when you'll be working with former NFL kicker Jay Feely. So this was the first time, but it's not going to be the last time for you.
Yeah, I'm really excited to have the opportunity to work with CBS as well. That's another thing you grow up watching as a kid, the NFL on CBS, and I remember some of the early days of that show, and so to be a part of that family is also very rewarding. And I think you're right. I think moving forward, a game is a game, an announcer is an announcer, and if you've earned the opportunity to be there, then that's fantastic. I think over the years, what we're starting to see is, especially in a softball-mad state like Alabama, and the success that the Tide have had and the success that the Tigers have had, you can cut your chops and earn the respect of people through a lot of different sports now. And that's something that I talk about with a lot of younger sportscasters that are interested in getting into play-by-play. You get out there, and there are so many more opportunities for younger kids to get reps now in the business, and that's encouraging, and that's, I think, going to be a big positive moving forward, especially for a lot of younger women now that are starting to get into it.
And I definitely want to get into a little softball with you here in a few minutes before I am finished with this interview. When you started out your play-by-play career, of course, you read you went to Syracuse, which has an incredible broadcasting school, and you started doing play-by-play more than 20 years ago. The landscape was different, and it was kind of groundbreaking to see female play-by-play announcer in any sport that wasn't a women's sport. And now you've been doing college football for over 10 years. When you were kind of establishing your career, is the NFL something that you thought about and aspired to do?
Oh, absolutely. Because, in fact, when I was growing up, there may have been a few softball game or football games on collegiately on a Saturday each weekend. It wasn't the same landscape that it is today. So the one thing you could always count on was, Sunday and the NFL. And that's where, I used to spend, you'd hustle off to church in the morning and swing by and pick up some donuts on the way home and be ready to go for the NFL. And you'd watch games. And I remember, with my brothers and the other kids in the neighborhood, halftime, you'd grab the football and you'd run outside for 15 minutes and get a quick game in, and then you'd be back in to watch the end of the NFL game. So that was always on the radar for sure. And those, in a lot of ways, for me, we didn't have the college powerhouses of Alabama and Auburn to follow on a Saturday. We had some good Syracuse football, but, in those days, even a lot of the games weren't nationally televised or locally televised, so you were relying on the NFL to watch a lot of football.
Absolutely. This Saturday, you're back in the college booth on ABC. You've got Memphis hosting UCLA. That's at 11 a.m. Central kickoff time. And UCLA, of course, a couple of weeks ago, that heart-stopping, unbelievable comeback that they had over Texas A&M. Jim Mora Jr. has been under quite a bit of scrutiny there in Los Angeles, so a big win from him. Memphis and the Liberty Bowl can always be tough. Kind of preview that matchup for me.
Well, we've got a couple of quarterbacks that are certainly on the NFL scouts' radar, and I think both of them are actually listed, with our recruiting guys at ESPN. Memphis quarterback Riley Ferguson is a former SEC guy from Tennessee, and certainly Rosen and Sam Darnold will be going back and forth, I think, all year in L.A. So we're expecting kind of a shootout, to be honest with you. I think both offenses are pretty potent, and they're really going to put a lot of pressure on those defenses and those secondaries on Saturday. And, it's a chance, I think, for UCLA to continue to try and prove that the Pac-12 has the chops on the road for a game that is going to be starting at 9 a.m. Pacific time for the Bruins. I think they've already made some adjustments to their practice schedule all week to try and help with that adjustment for them. So we're really excited about the quarterbacks and the potential for some, big crooked numbers on the board.
Beth Mowins, our guest here on the Bud Light Hotline, talking NFL, college football, college softball, and more. And my listeners would never let me live it down if I don't ask you about Alabama with your experience as a college football play-by-play announcer. Your usual broadcast team was in Tuscaloosa this past weekend for the Fresno State game, minus you, of course, and Adam Amin.
I missed my shot. I missed my chance.
Adam Amin did a great job filling in for you. But your thoughts, Beth, on this 10-year run that Nick Saban has had at Alabama. Of course, we know Alabama's got the tradition, they've got the history, they've got the desire to win, so it's a combination I think will always give them a chance to be a factor in college football. But then when you bring in a guy like Nick Saban to take over this program after it had been down for a number of years, I think everyone expected success. I don't know if any of us expected what he has put together. It's been amazing. Just your take on Nick Saban and Alabama football, this 10-year run that he's been on.
I think, Gary, as impressive as what we've seen on the field, what really strikes me is what must be going on off the field.
Right.
It's one thing to recruit guys, but we see, around the country, some are hits, some are misses. And sometimes when a guy's sitting around for a couple of years waiting for his turn, he's not the same guy he was when he arrived. And I think what impresses me the most is the job that goes on behind the scenes at Alabama, so that when you lose half your team to the NFL, you have guys that are ready to go when it's their turn starting out the next season. And the consistency that Alabama has shown, to the point now where, for better or worse, you do expect them to win every game. You do expect them to look impressive doing it. The expectation that has been born out of that consistency and the preparation that is going on with Nick Saban, I think, and his staff from top to bottom, from the nutrition guys to the strength and conditioning guys to the assistants, and it's just really remarkable that you now have a team that you would be surprised if they weren't in the top 2 or 3 in the preseason every year.
Absolutely. It's been phenomenal. Finally, before I turn you loose, I got to ask you about softball as well. And our pal Patrick Murphy has built an incredible program here at Alabama as well. And I've been here to watch this sport grow, and I do a lot of the telecasts for local TV and for ESPN Digital Network. You remember it when it was still pretty much just a West Coast sport, and collegiate softball wasn't much of a television sport. I am just amazed. First of all, it's so exciting. Anybody that watches it gets hooked. But to see where it's come from really in the last 10 years to become a national TV sport that brings in a wide audience. Of course, if you watch one game at the Women's College World Series in Oklahoma City, you're just, that'll do it for you. But just talk about, first of all, overall, the meteoric rise of this sport, not just among the fan bases east of the Mississippi, the Southeastern Conference. It's a huge fan spectator sport, but also the television ratings that were pulled in at the Women's College World Series, and how this has become a big-time TV sport. It's remarkable to me.
Gary, it is starting to push women's basketball a little bit in terms of the television ratings. Basketball on the women's side has always been the most viewed sport, and certainly the women's Final Four is still a cut above everything else ratings-wise. But softball is making massive inroads with the audience, and it's started a discussion about the growth, I think, of women's sports in general, and why people are watching and who the audience is. And I think there's several things at play. First and foremost is the dimensions of the field are different than baseball, obviously. The action happens rapidly. You really get a look at the athleticism of these women. The other thing I think is, too, it is a sport that moves along. You can get a game in 2 hours, 2:15, and you have something that's very recognizable. You have something that, hey, I can appreciate and respect a pitching duel, but I can also appreciate, an 8-7 slugfest. And then I think one of the other big things at play is you have guys that look at women's sports and say, you know what, I could do that. I could probably beat them. And there may not be as much respect for that. I don't agree with it, but I see that from guys. You look at softball, and it's different because you have a lot of guys out there that have tried to hit a rise ball and been completely flummoxed by it. And so there is an appreciation for what these pitchers are doing and what these hitters are doing, because you have a lot of fans that know, ain't no way I can do that. and there is a greater appreciation, I think, in some regards for softball because of it. And then I think with the fact that there is really nothing else up against it, if we have a break in the NBA playoffs and we have the College World Series, that sort of week window all to ourselves, it's the best thing on television at that time of the year. So I think that plays into it also. And everybody loves to watch people compete for championships.
Yeah, I'll tell anybody if they think it's easy, like you said, stand in that box against Alexis Osorio when she throws that 67-mile-per-hour rise ball and see if you can even get the bat off your shoulder. Just to swing it in time is a difficult chore. Where our good friend, our mutual friend Karen Johns, I'm sure, is listening this morning, Beth, and I want to ask you about this Alabama program under Patrick Murphy. Of course, the SEC promotional motto is it just means more, and you see that in softball. This is a softball crazy conference among all the schools, but he was so proud to become the first SEC school to win a national championship. He wanted to become the first one east of the Mississippi, but Michigan beat him to that. But the fact that, much like Nick Saban, he's not just flashed in a couple of seasons, but he sustained the program. And to me as a coach, that's the most difficult thing. It's one thing to have success, but once you've had success, to stay there. And even in what some people called a down year this past year, they could have easily beaten Florida in that Super and gotten back to the World Series. He's had a nice run here in Tuscaloosa. Well,
and I think one of the things that Patrick and really that Tuscaloosa should be proud of is, when we're around the country and people ask, if I was going to a game somewhere, if I wanted to experience softball at its best environment, the Roadhouse is right at the top of the list of places we tell people to go because of what he has built there, of the house that Kretsch built there, and then of the great players that have rolled through there since. To be able to compete at that level year in and year out is not an easy thing to do. And the sustained success in the postseason that Pat has had is the other thing that you look at and say, that's pretty cool to be a part of. And to have Minnesota go in there last year and to be able to beat a team that a lot of people thought should have been the top seed in the tournament, it's just a really cool place to go to and to experience the sport at its best.
I've kept you over the allotted time, but I do want to ask you about the Auburn situation. The Myers family came in there, of course, led by Clint Myers, and just really put that program on the national map. It was a phenomenal turnaround, and what has happened since this summer. I know it's disappointing for all of us, and we don't know all the details, so I don't want you to have to get into that, but just your general feeling on what's happened at Auburn since the end of this season.
Well, I think first and foremost, you feel for those student athletes. Regardless of, what we find out was going on, with the coaching staff, you want to go to college and have an amazing experience as a student athlete. And unfortunately, it looks like that was not the case for a lot of the girls that were there. That too is a wonderful place to watch a softball game. And as you know, around the SEC, they do everything the right way, and I'm sure they're going to take care of business there with the best intentions of the student athlete in mind. It's going to be tough to get a coaching staff in there with a cloud hanging over the program for a while, but it's also one of those unique places where you can recruit to now because the facility's there and the resources are there. And unfortunately, I think for a while it's going to be a wait-and-see type of situation as to what direction that program is going to go in.
Beth Mowins will be on the call for UCLA at Memphis this Saturday morning at 11 a.m. Central Time, noon Eastern, and she'll be back doing the NFL coming up in September when she has the call September 24th of the Browns-Colts game in Indianapolis. Of course, as we alluded to, she made history this past Monday night. Listen, I appreciate you getting up this morning and visiting with us. It's been a pleasure, Beth. Thank you.